In this video, I'm going to talk about how to remove the vibration damper, which is pretty simple once you get access to it. But unfortunately, you need to get access to it, and the mount pretty much sits over the top of it like that. So have a look at the video that I made on how to remove the engine mount with the engine remaining in the car, because the workshop manual talks about needing to remove the engine from the car to be able to do that, and you don't. So have a look at that. And then once we get to here, it's relatively simple to remove. There are 6 screws that are holding it in, and there is a single location dowel which is stuck out of the end of the crankshaft, which locates it in the correct position. On the other side, there's a dowel pin there, and the sort of this little sleeve that sort of slots into the crankshaft. But the thing that's really holding onto it tight is the interference fit on the dowel. Once you remove the mount and you get access to this, this is what it's going to look like. These screws are torque to yield. They are 10 Newton meters plus another 90 degrees of turn on install, so they will all need to be replaced. They're an M8 by 1.0, which is a fine pitch, 25 millimeters long, and the grade is 12.9. So they're not that expensive from the dealership, so make sure you replace those. To hold the crankshaft in the correct position, because it's going to rotate when you tighten and try and loosen these off, there's a locating pin which is in about the 10 o'clock position over here when you're looking at it from underneath. It's 8 millimeters, so all I've got is a grade 10.9, so it's really strong bolt. I've just shaved off the threads off the end, and that fits perfectly in there and holds it exactly as the OEM tool would do. Each of the markings here, just for interest, are the position of the pistons for the crankshaft when doing timing, and it's this teardrop one here that actually gets you to hold into the correct spot when you're doing all the timing, setting up the camshafts. Turn the engine over so this can be locked into one of these pins, because it's going to be put in any one of these when we're doing this job, because all it needs to do is just be held. It doesn't need to be in any particular position, but you'll need a tool that rotates this thing around. The OEM tool sits over the heads of each of these, and you put a wrench on the end of it and turn it. All I've done is I've just made this thing, which is a piece of wood, some M10 bolts, and these heads here actually stick into these holes. So the holes themselves are 20 millimeters, and the size of these heads was slightly less than that, so it fits in perfectly. The centers of the holes, so the opposite holes, are 95 millimeters apart. I actually made it 85, so instead of sitting it through that one and that one, I actually sit it through that, so I could actually get access to this if I needed to. So it went on like that. And when I've threaded this into the timber, I've made that gap from there to there about 30 millimeters. Because what that's going to do now is sit hard against the edge of the vibration damper, and the heads aren't going to go and sink down below the edge here and sort of get caught in underneath it. They're just going to sit there nicely, so I can hold that hard against it and turn as required, and they turn the engine over really nicely. So once you've turned the crank over, we put that pin in one of those holes, so it's going to not turn over. We can remove all of those screws, and then the only thing that's really holding it really hard in place is it's an interference fit on the dowel. So you really have to get in here and grab hold of this and shake it like crazy, and eventually it will come off. It'll wiggle, and you go, why is this thing coming off? It's because the interference fit on that. So I would suggest when you turn the crankshaft to get in the right position so you can actually turn it over, have it so the dowel pin here is at one of the 90-degree points. We're going to do that, and that's the thing that's actually going to allow us to remove the thing. I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. And once that comes off, obviously you can replace that, replace the seal behind, or there are some other stuff that you need to remove this for, like the coolant pump housing if you've got leaks from that. So this is the end of the crankshaft here. You can see all the 6 holes that are the threads for where those screws are going to go in, and that's the locating dowel there. And that is the hole that you use for the locating pin to hold the crankshaft and vibration damper in place. So in the car with the vibration damper installed, when we are turning this with that tool, expect that as we rotate it around, it's either going to be hard or easy depending on if it's on a compression stroke on one of the pistons. And you might be able to see the dowel, the hole for the dowel is just there at the moment. I want to rotate that around to about the 9 o'clock position. And there's the teardrop hole, which is the OT1/4, that I want to rotate to about there, which is where that locating pin is going to go. And you can start to see that, the funny shaped one up there, the teardrop. And you might just need to give it a bit of a wiggle, and eventually it will slot straight in there now that's locked in place. So I've removed all the screws and removed the locating pin. Now I'm just going to grab hold of the top here. Which, if you can see that wiggling there, and eventually it comes off. When installing, what I found was the easiest thing to do was to put the vibration damper up there, stick your finger through the hole. It'll actually go through into the crankshaft, and that'll help you locate where the central point is. Make sure that dowel is exactly the right position. So in this case here, it's going to be in the 9 o'clock. And then put a couple of screws in, so at least it's being held there, and then just gently put all the screws in. But then to get it to locate on the dowel, in this case it's in there, so I'm going to put these in. I'm going to gently tighten these one at a time to pull that down, and that should pull down. You should feel that evenly pull down on the dowel in there. If it pulls down really unevenly, it means you haven't actually put the hole for the dowel in the right position. But then once that's pulled down with those 2 screws, then you can go around, gently tighten everything down, and then you can torque it up as per the spec, so 10 Newton meters plus another 90.